Welcome to Sydney. I'm going to take you on a tour of my 10 most favourite art sculptures. This tree behind me is wrapped in silk and is set outside Sydney's Discovery Museum. It is stark white against the green parklands, which makes it stand out more and attracts everyone, a whole lot of tourists to it, and as well as a lot of seagulls. So enjoy! Sydney Opera House that was designed in 1959 by a Danish architect, Jean Dixon. It took 14 years to build and 102 million to make. The Sydney Opera House is a popular place for culture, but it's also a modern artwork that is actually a building that has been designed for everyone to view that is out in public. He also won a Pulitzer Prize for his work, even though he never actually got to see the finished product of the museum. Opera House. Walking to the ferry, when on our way, we noticed behind me a painting of Brown Bear Lane that was depicted in its early 1900s. I stopped to look at it because it was just so fascinating. It looked really 3D and it just stood out from everything in this lane, and it's just so amazing that I had to put it in one of my favourite artworks in Sydney. Australia Square, and behind me is Alexander Calder's cosplay, which was made in 1967 in France. It is made of Ancien Demi-Jour, which is French for steel, and is located right in the middle of Australia Square. And as you can see, it's a very large sculpture that really draws the eye to it. Matchsticks entitled Almost Once, which was Brett Whiteley's gift to the museum in 1991. The matchsticks are made out of blackbutt timber and fiberglass. One is a full rejuvenated new matchstick, the other being a burnt out shriveled one. They are said to represent life and death, old being death and new being life. The reclining figure named Angels that was crafted out of bronze in 1980 by a sculptor named Henry Moore, who was born in 1989, which makes him around 82 years old when he crafted this sculpture. Gilbert Bayes' Monument to the Dead, which was made in the early 1920s in the First World War. The one behind me is the Offerings of Peace, as you can tell by the olive branch held by the man. Adjacent to it is the Offerings of War.
Strategy for public sculpture is exactly what the description entails. It is a form of art that is not hidden away in the galleries or museums, but rather art forms that are freely enjoyed by the general public. The pieces I have chosen have been placed in periods of decades studying the curatorial practice for public sculpture, one that is not controlled by a single curator, but rather a number of individuals who desire to make a connection between the general public and the artwork. Assessment of the dates the works were completed, these public sculptures provide an archive of taste and perception. Each artwork is sculptural in form and differs in stylistic qualities, from the realistic sculpture, which is a memorial to the dead, which is situated outside the front of the New South Wales Art Gallery, to the abstract sculpture of Calder, which is situated outside Australia Square, to the conceptuality engaging sculpture by Brett Whiteley titled Almost Once. Using these sculptural works is the commonality of scale in which the work would be hard-pressed to fit within the gallery space. Instead, these works, by virtue of their sheer size and presence, create their own own environment and complement the wider surroundings. Each sculpture, by virtue of this blurring of its physical space with that shared by the general public, makes anyone within their vicinity an audience. Displayed by Alexander Calder is a black mass that focuses the attention onto its form and place in the environment. It flatters the surrounding buildings to construct a view from across the street. The elongated curves and voids provide a complementary analogy with rectangular forms of windows and buildings. Such artworks that in turn make the audience reconsider the environment of every day. The game of perception and tricking the pedestrian to view the artwork is masterfully constructed in Whiteley's Almost Once. In this work, the micro-object of a matchstick becomes a giant plaything. It renders the viewer small and insignificant. The artist challenges interpretation by the use of scale and the selection of subject matter. The matchstick operates as symbols of life and death. The use of such an object references the use of commercial objects by the pop artist, but this work is postmodern as it challenges and makes effective use of irony to convey its instinctual account of life. Artwork is a memorial for the dead from World War I. It is a testimony to the loss and quiet strength of resolution and remembrance. Both horse and rider are stoic and monumental. The rider is dressed in a classical armor, alluding to a metaphor to the history of aggression and the noble cause of global conflict. The work does not present an alternative view of such a conflict. It is directed as a tribute of the supreme sacrifice rather than being victims of a mechanized war. The sculpture alludes to the nobility of the human form and classical values by virtue of its realistic style. Three artworks establish a strategy of production by means of scale, use of sight, and stylization of form. Each work provides an account of a time and reflects artist's belief for it. It is one of remembrance. For Calder, it is a treatment of the cityscape as a background for his abstract forms, display and punctuate a visual uniqueness in the everyday. Whiteley treated his artwork also with a sense of form, with the object, scale, and meaning. All three artworks transform everyday spaces into marvelous environments that invite the audience to daydream for a moment as they move through the daily routine of business or leisure within Sydney.